Hello internet stranger friends. I hope you've been well. It's been a very long time since we last caught up. Today I felt like sharing my plants with you. You guys had a lot of questions about my plants, starting off with which one is my oldest? And the answer is this glorious Monstera. So this was a plant that we got back in 2016 when we moved from Australia to Canada, and I started my plant collection all over. This was originally a plant from IKEA. I'm pretty sure if you go back in my old videos, you can see this plant as just like a little tiny baby Monstera in our apartment. I have never repotted it. Like, this has been the OG pot since 2016. She's kind of one of those low maintenance plants that I really just don't have to worry about. And I'm so grateful because it's just the most beautiful plant. I might take her 2 or 3 times a year, either outside or into the big shower to give it like a full proper soak and give it some fertilizer. But honestly, I just water as regular and kind of leave her alone for the most part. I originally used these garden stakes to prop her up, but when she got so big, I started leaning her against the wall. And then recently we have used these pipe wall mounts to secure her up the wall so she can climb. Yes, the air roots will likely start to attach themselves to the wall, but since we own, it's really not the end of the world, and my ideal situation would be this climbing all the way up to the ceiling. Dreams. I'm often asked about the big leaves and how to get the fenestration. Really, all you can do is mimic what the plant would grow in nature. So this is a tropical plant. I try to keep this room as humid as I kind of can while still being comfortable, and I'm making sure that it has adequate light. I think another thing that is really helpful is when your plant is young, start staking it up. They want to grow up, they're climbers, right? And so when you give it as many conditions as it would naturally have, it's gonna do what it does in nature. I often, when the plant was small, would cut the leaves and just get rid of the older kind of ones down at the bottom. As you can see in here at the base of the stem, this is the first leaf right here. And so I had clipped all of these leaves at the base as it grew to try and encourage more mature leaves to come out and come through. And so now on the top ones, these have so many beautiful fenestrations and the leaves come out so happy. So don't be afraid to take your clean cutting tools and chop up your plant, because ultimately it will help it. And then the last tip for growing a plant like this, or any plant in general really, is make sure that you dust the leaves. It's not gonna be able to breathe and get sunlight properly if there's a coating of dust on the leaf. I had a lot of questions about pests and pest control, and to be honest, I don't know if I'm the best person to ask about that because I haven't really experienced that many pests. We've had spider mites a couple of times, but those are pretty easily dealt with a little bit of neem oil. And just making sure that you're really looking at your plants and catching things early, you usually don't have a problem with bugs. The only other thing that I think we've had are those little like gnats, the little black flies that like fly around. Those occur when you have watered your plant too much basically, and the soil is like constantly moist, and then the eggs keep hatching. When you let your plant dry out really well and then deeply water it, you have that occur less and less. And then also having things like sticky tape strips that catch the bugs. I feel like if you always quarantine new plants when you bring them in, and you make sure that they are free of pests, and you make sure that the soil is good, you're probably not going to have that much of a problem. And just constantly looking at your plants, caring for them, wiping them down, making sure that you're like looking at them actually from stem to under the leaf to the tip of the leaf. Like, you probably would catch something pretty early even if there was a problem. So just pay attention. Google will be your best friend though. Like, honestly, Google and plant groups on Facebook, so handy. Here's a couple of other plants in our bedroom that get the morning light. I love, love, love my rubber tree. This one we packed home across the sea bus in Vancouver from a little night market, and it was like maybe this tall when we got her. By having the indirect light, she's just been very happy. And like, look at the size of this bottom leaf. This is another plant that needs a good dusting. But look at that. Like, that's just incredible. I love that. Right beside is an asparagus fern. I've found this actually a little bit hard to keep alive. A mistake I used to make with my plants all the time was I used to take them out of the black plastic pot that they came in like immediately and planted them into a pretty pot. That's a mistake. It's just so much easier to pull it out, deeply water it. You are waiting and waiting and waiting for it to fully come out the bottom like that, and you can physically feel the plant get heavier and heavier. You could water this all day long and it's not gonna be a problem as long as there is drainage. And then put it back into the little vanity pot. This jade is an example of a plant that doesn't have a drainage hole, and that is something that I have been fighting for the past few years with this plant, getting the watering ratio right. I just really should repot this with something that has a hole in the bottom because it just doesn't do as well as it would if it was able to be properly watered. Also worth mentioning, don't water with really cold water. That's just mean. They're tropical plants. You should be using like room temperature water. This Florida beauty plant is so much fun. I love the variegation on it. It's super cool seeing the leaves unfurl, and you never really get to see the full variegation until it's kind of matured a bit more, and then it goes much more yellow. So much fun. I do really need to swap out this baby moss pole though for something a little bit larger. Side note, I use a lot of hair clips when I'm securing tiny little plants like that because they're not damaging, and I mean, you can get little Velcro bits, but I have hair clips. Against the window in our bedroom, I have these plants. I'm gonna have a hard time showing you this tall one because of the backlighting. This one has grown like crazy in the last little bit. It is all the way up touching the roof, and we definitely need to do a bit of a rearrange with the situation up here. If you don't guide these plants, they just wanna go up, right? And since it can't, it's a little bit upset at the ends, as you can see. So I'm gonna clip it back and I'm gonna start training it along the window. And I'll show you an example later of another plant that's exactly this type of plant that's been actually trained, and it looks so much better and healthier. This Mikan is needing a drink, but she is absolutely beautiful. I'm such a fan of the velvety leaves. This little guy is a variegated rubber tree. And then over here is my Swiss cheese plant. These guys are on these bendable moss poles, which are phenomenal. I will leave a link down below. It's from a company called Mossify, and I do have a discount code with them, but you can bend them to whatever style of bend you want. They can be completely unique for your plant's needs. This plant right here is a ZZ plant, and these are some of my favorite to grow because they're so easy, very low maintenance, and typically don't require a lot of light. I have a little plant hanging on our bed frame. This has been really fun. This is actually a good example of a plant that doesn't really need to have a drainage hole. It's not doing terribly if I give it little sips because you really can't kill these types of philodendrons. They are pretty happy doing the least. I have this gorgeous bird of paradise in our bathroom, but her leaves get a little bit battered because she's underneath a heat vent. That is something to absolutely look out for. Living in a place that has seasons, you're probably gonna have your heat or your cool air on at some point, so do be aware of where you're placing your plants with that. Sometimes you can't really do anything because they're typically beside a window, and that is valuable real estate space. I sometimes will close the vent off if there is multiple vents in the area and I'm able to close that particular one off and still get like the heat or the cold in the room. But sometimes it's the only vent in the room. It's just gonna be what it's gonna be. I don't mind that the leaves get a little bit battered because leaves aren't perfect in nature either. Some of my plants have these cute little mushroom ornaments. I love them so much. I find them at like dollar stores, sometimes at hardware stores, random little places, but I love the addition because they just look so cute. I used to have an amazing palm in the shower, on the shower seat. It was glorious until I went on vacation for 2 weeks and it was the only plant that I forgot to water. It is ironic that it was in the shower. This is a really fun golden pothos that I put in there that I really would like to trim this back, propagate, and then make it a little bit bushier up the top. I have an oxalis up here, and this is a really funny plant because it sometimes does really well and then sometimes completely dies and then comes completely back. This plant in my closet was actually one of my first plants that we got back in Canada as well. It probably will be repotted at some point. I really don't love the pot that it's in aesthetically or just in general because I feel like it's just not an easy pot for this type of plant. But she's doing pretty good right now. Casually sitting beside the dog food, whatever. Above our bathroom mirror, we have this long skinny window that gets indirect light all day long. I have a little cactus over in the corner, a propagation of a Hoya that my Nana gave me, and over here is a burrow's tail. It looks like it might get direct light, but it doesn't because of the way that our building is situated. The sun is basically behind that portion of the house the majority of the day, so this just gets a lot of strong indirect light. In the nursery, we just have the one hanging plant now. We had a couple plants on the floor when she was younger, but now that she's on the move and much more independent in her room, thought it was safer to just have the one hanging plant. And then our other end of the house is like the living room and the kitchen, and we get really beautiful afternoon light, as you can kind of see. Let's check out some of the plants that are over here. This is my variegated rubber tree, and honestly, she has seen better days. In a previous spot, she was getting sunburnt and was unhappy. I have definitely struggled with consistent watering. I have a toddler. I've been busy. This is not the happiest she's been, but it's also not the saddest she's been. You can definitely see some regrowth happening down and in here, and I think with a little bit more love and attention, she'll be back to her thriving glory. This is one of my favorite little corners. This ZZ plant is so happy getting this dappled afternoon light. Constantly has new shoots coming out. I just love this plant. I love the look of it, and I love that she's just low maintenance. This cactus over here, I believe is called candlestick cactus. She needs some water. You can see some floppy bits over here. I grew this one probably about 3 feet tall, and then I hacked it completely across. I propagated a lot of the stems. I gave some of them to friends. It was just getting a bit too tall for my liking, and so anyway, this is what the regrowth of that looks like. I had a lot of cactuses at our old place because we had a lot of direct afternoon sun, and I had a lot of window ledge that I could allocate to my cactus plants. And then when we moved, and knowing that like I was pregnant and gonna have a baby, I was kind of like, well, cactuses are kind of the first to go for me because they're pokey, and that will be a problem with a baby. Now this glorious art piece, this is actually not a living plant. Even though it looks like one, the moss was living, but it is now preserved. This is a beautiful piece from a company called Greenstems. She's a local Vancouver company, and she makes the coolest pieces. Oh my God. All of the mushrooms and moss were living, and then the ferns are artificial. There is absolutely no maintenance for this. It's just a set and forget. I don't even have to dust it. It's never needed that. They are so beautiful. I highly recommend you check out her shop because she makes incredible pieces. Queen Lola is sitting in her sunspot, but behind her is my little collection of plants in this corner. So this right here, let's start with Figgy. Figgy is my fiddle leaf fig that I got in Vancouver, and she has done really well over the years considering. So if you followed me for a while, you might know Figgy's story. I went on vacation in, I think it was like 2017 or 2018, and I had a friend who lived in the same building say that he would come up and care for my plants. And we walked through all of the plant care and whatnot, and lo and behold, it did not happen. So when I came back into the apartment, it was like stepping into a graveyard of plants. It was horrific. Everything was just so dead or dying. There was leaves all over the ground. It was really traumatizing, to be completely honest. And Figgy was one that copped it really bad. I think that she had maybe 7 or 8 big leaves on the ground, and she was just so sad. And you guys know, like, figs require consistency. They are very picky plants, and so it took a very long time to nurture her back to health. Since then, she has split into multiple different heads, which has been very exciting. That's a relatively recent update for her. I had like clipped the bud, and it encouraged it to sprout multiple sprouts. So now she will have multiple branches from up top. My other little fig down here, she had a really hard time when we moved, and so that was one that took, again, a little while to restore. So as you can see, they get pretty much dappled direct afternoon light for the most part. This one right here is a dragon plant. This one I could probably move. I think this is a little bit too much light for her because I constantly am picking off these little brown bits. She's a happy plant in a better spot, but I just chucked her there for now, and I mean, she's holding on, but I should probably move her. Beside her is another bird of paradise. She had a bit of a hard winter. She's over top of the heat vent over this way, so that was kind of a strike against. And then I had this little rope kind of holding her together because she was really trying to split apart and the weight was getting too much. Except I didn't really think about the fact that when new stems grew, the new stem grew and it caught behind this string, and so it basically strangled the plant, and it took out the entire top half of the new leaf, and I was so disappointed. Behind, I have this little Norfolk pine. This is adorable. I didn't have a spot to put it, so I just chucked it in the corner, and it's been here all winter. it's doing okay, but I definitely need to find a better dedicated spot for her. I have this double planter hanging from the ceiling, and up top it has a string of hearts that is all the way to the floor, and then I have a Swiss cheese plant. I think that I will probably swap this plant out. She just wants to climb, and it doesn't look good. I want something to trail down with the string of hearts. I also probably should propagate this one a little bit more because she's a little bit bare up top. Okay, here's what I was talking about with that plant that's also in my bedroom that is climbing all the way up to the roof. This is the example of the one that I have trained, and now it is actively growing that way rather than constantly trying to go up and hit the roof. This was that tall when my daughter was born, and she is 18 months old, and that is how large it is now. Over in this corner, I have a corn plant that desperately needs replanting. It is holding on. It's not happy, but she's holding on. And then this beautiful Monstera, she's big and she's scraggly, but this was rescued from a Facebook Marketplace person, and she was selling it for like 40 bucks. And I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna take you home and I'm gonna rehab you. And I did, and she is coming back strong. I planted a couple of the propagated bits in the bottom, and now I have like multiple plants going, which is so much fun. In a few years, I think that this will just be stunning. Okay, over here I have one of the saddest begonias you are ever going to see. This used to be so majestic, and then winter happened and she just had a fit. I'm going to hack this apart and propagate it because it is just sad looking at it and knowing what it once was. I'm just gonna start over from this, and I'll show you actually the bits that I have propagated from her though. I have her previous propagations up here in a little jar of water doing really well. So I will hack that other one apart, put it in water like this, and then replant the whole thing this spring. I have some propagated Swiss cheese plant right there, and this spindly babe is my Sigonium albino. Beautiful plant, and I have basically killed it multiple times over and over and over, and she keeps coming back for more. They need some rehab. I am sure you have been eyeing this beauty up. So this is my garden, and it's my hydroponic growing system. I'm not gonna talk too much about the plants that are in it, other than I absolutely love growing in this, and it is so much fun, and my current favorite plant that I'm growing in it is my cannabis plant. I have grown and harvested cannabis from this tower. It is so much fun. Let me know if you're interested in a separate video on the garden tower because there's a lot to say about it. It's a very cool device. I'm just not squishing it all into this one video. I have these glorious shelves in our kitchen, and they have always been perfect for plants. So here is what I got stacked on them right now. And then the other side, I have an aloe, a little Thanksgiving cactus, and a couple of propagations up top. I need to deal with those guys. And then down here, I have a propagation that I've had in this bottle for way too long. Look at that root system. I need to do something about this. And then on the kitchen island, I have this. I think I'm gonna repot her though. I do not like terracotta. I feel like they just suck the water right out of them. I have to water this way too often, and I'm just not into it. This African violet sits on the kitchen island, and it's beautiful. It was from my grandma, and I got it when she passed away. I have never been able to make this flower though, and that makes me kind of sad because my grandma was so good at taking care of these, and I'm just very mediocre at taking care of this plant. Something that I've come to terms with over the past decade of plant owning though is that some plants just are not meant to be in your care. Sometimes they're just not a good fit for your space. Sometimes they're not a good fit for your lifestyle. You know, like I do not get along well with colitas. Every time I've had one, I've killed one, and it sucks because I love them, and I'm just not willing to bring another one into my home to brutally kill it. Okay, downstairs, this is a plant that's in our entryway. She is up a moss pole and does relatively well because she gets morning light. They kind of deal well with low light. I put this Monstera plant here. This was originally in our guest bedroom that just gets basically no light, and so she has stayed so small. The leaves almost look like they're like some type of like pothos or philodendron. They're just so tiny compared to my other Monsteras in the house. Here is the other half of that Hoya plant that my Nana gave me. This is getting repotted this spring because this is just not a match. It is not a happy plant in this ceramic pot. Glenn wants to have nice plants in his office, and he is not willing to take care of said plants. Oh no, this Burl Marks is really upset. Another plant in a terracotta pot, and another one, and I hate them, and I feel like they're just terrible for plants. I don't know why people like growing in them. Our Ficus Audrey, and I'm not positive what this plant is called, but they had taken a beating in other parts of the house, and now they are in this indirect morning light window and starting to come back. You can see a lot of new regrowth on this Ficus Audrey. Love this tree, but oh my gosh, this was definitely a finicky one, and she did not have a good time when we moved. Our downstairs living room has a very tiny little window, and so I have 3 plants up in it. I think that's a Hoya, that's a zigzag cactus, and then a moonlight sansevieria or snake plant. And then the drastically dark room is our spare bedroom, and the only plants that I have in here are a neon pothos and a snake plant because they require such little light. Seriously, the camera is making this room look brighter than it actually is. It is so dark in here. You guys wanted to know if I had any fake plants. I do. I have this one here in the bathroom. This bathroom does not have any natural light, so this works out really well. And then same situation in this downstairs bathroom. No light, so I decided to use this fake string of pearls. It's very cute. I have a fake eucalyptus hanging just in the shower here, and a fake IKEA plant on this shelf. And then the last fake plant I have is in the guest bedroom in this vase. The downstairs light situation is a little depressing, so as you can imagine, most of my plants are up here. Having a toddler with this many plants, you definitely have to stay on top of redirecting. Right from an early age, as soon as she got mobile, we had used the same redirection. Plants are for looking, not for touching. And redirect to something else, and knock on wood that continues to work throughout our toddlerhood journey. But yeah, so far it really hasn't been a problem. The only time that she's kind of dug into a plant and into the dirt, it was because we were just teaching her like how to clean up and how to wipe things and how to vacuum, and she was digging dirt out of the plant to then get the vacuum and vacuum it up. So very innocent, but easily redirected, and we haven't really had a plant casualty yet. Knock on wood, fingers crossed. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed today's plant tour. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you soon. Bye.